Hi class, how's life? Today group 2 will talk about discourse and pragmatics. First, Fanny will talk about 1. Conversational implicature and discourse. 2. Politeness, face and discourse.
Hi, my name is Fanny Tifano, and now, as the first presenter of Group 2, I would like to talk about conversational implicature and discourse, and politeness, face, and discourse. Alright, without further ado, let us begin. Firstly, conversational implicature and discourse. Conversational implicature refers to the inference a hearer makes about a speaker's intended meaning that arises from the use of the literal meaning of what the speaker said, the conversational principle, and its maxims. For example, I say, "There's nothing on at the movies." I don't mean nothing at all, but I actually mean there's no movie that interests me, or I don't feel like watching any of them. My interlocutor will assume this and implicate my meaning. Remember, implicature is not the same as inference. As Thomas, 1995, explains, an implicature is generated intentionally by the speaker and may or may not be understood by the hearer. Meanwhile, an inference is produced by a hearer on the basis of certain evidence and may not, in fact, be the same as what a speaker intends. In other words, an implicature is more likely viewed from the speaker's point of view, while an inference is more likely viewed from the hearer's point of view. In addition, according to Greece 1975, there's also a term called maxim. There are 4 types of maxims. Maxim of quality, which refers to saying the truth. Maxim of quantity, which means giving the sufficient information as it is required. Maxim of relation, which means being relevant to the question asked. And maxim of manner, which means being clear in terms of expression usage to avoid ambiguity. For example, let's take a look at this dialogue. A said, "What would you like?" And B answered, "A beer, thanks." Here, B has followed the maxim of quality by saying what he wants, the maxim of manner by answering clearly, the maxim of quantity by saying precise and enough information, and maxim of relation by providing an answer that is clearly relevant to the question. Next, we will move to politeness, face, and discourse. 2 further key notions in the area of pragmatics and discourse are politeness and face. Politeness and face are important to understand why people choose to say things in a particular way in spoken and written discourse. In early work on this topic, Lakoff, 1973, proposes 3 maxims of politeness. They are, don't impose, give options, and make your hearer feel good. Let's take a look at the dialogue. Stephanie calls her mom for the train station to ask for a ride home. In this dialogue, Stephanie asks for a lift in an elaborate fashion by saying, "Do you think you could possibly come pick me up?" She gives her mother an option by suggesting if she's busy cooking dinner. Then it's not necessary and makes her mother feel good by saying, "Oh, that's great." At the end, we may consider how socially we close or distant we are from our hearer. For example, we are close friends. I should ask questions. Is she or he older than me? And are we socially equal? We may consider how much or little power the hearer has over us. For example, am I talking to my boss or to my employee, to a policeman, to a service employee, or to a judge? We may also consider how significant what I want is and to the person I am talking to. For example, am I asking for change, for a loan, or to borrow a car? We may consider how much emphasis both of us in our cultures place on involvement and independence in circumstances like the one we are in. And lastly, we may consider whether both of us would have the same answers to those questions. Alright, that's all for me, and the next part will be continued by the next presenter. Thank you.
Next, Vara will talk about 3. Face and politeness across cultures. 4. Politeness and gender.
Hi everyone, I'm Fahradila Azahra. Now I'm going to continue talking about discourse and pragmatics in terms of face and politeness across cultures and politeness and gender. Okay, let me start from face and politeness across cultures. Well, we all know what it means by to be polite. Politeness is a part of our social life, a principle of every interaction, and we encounter it every day consciously and unconsciously. In the 1980s, two linguists, Brown and Levinson, proposed a theory of politeness. There are several important terms to be remembered. Let's start with the term face within politeness theory. The word face doesn't refer to your actual face, but to your public self-image that you have established for yourself and would like others to recognize. In simply, face here means your self-image. How do you want to be seen by people around you? Think about it. What's your social self-image? What's your face? How do you want others to perceive you? Face has two parts. First, the positive face and negative face. Positive face is where we want to be esteemed and admired and valued and respected by people around us. To maintain positive face, people often engage in politeness strategies that aim to show respect, kindness, and friendliness. That's how we want to be seen in a positive face. Next is negative face. In negative sense, we want to be free from people imposing on our freedom, on our ability to make choices, and on our decision. Let's say SpongeBob SquarePants as the example of positive face. SpongeBob is all about positive face. He is constantly seeking social approval and acceptance from the others, especially from his friends. He goes out of his way to make people happy and maintain positive relationships. This desire motivates his social interaction. Within Brown and Levinson's theory, we call this as a positive face. And then there is Squidward tentacles. We know that Squidward values his negative face much more than SpongeBob. He always wants to be left alone and mind his own business. He values his independence, his personal space, and autonomy. We know that he often becomes frustrated when SpongeBob disrupts his sense of independence because he doesn't want to be imposed on, and no, he's not interested in small talk with everyone at all. This is what we would call a negative face. So, it is important to point out that the specific nature of face and politeness varies from societies to societies and from culture to cultures. The ways in which people express politeness also differs across culture. For example, in some culture, the idea of personal space and independence may vary. In some societies, parents have more right to interfere in the household affairs of adult children than in others. In some cultures, a bedroom is private and cannot be entered, and in others, it is not. In some cultures also, a refusal of an offer may be merely polite, and in others may be impolite. Next, there are some examples of face and politeness in Indonesian and in Japanese culture. The first one is respect for elders. In Indonesian cultures, we know that showing respect to elders and people in position of authority is very polite. It is common to use honorifics such as the word bapak or ibu when addressing elders or superiors. Meanwhile, in Japan, there is bowing as a gesture of respect. Bowing is a common practice in Japan and serves as a non-verbal way to show respect and politeness. The next is indirect communication. Like Indonesia, Japan values indirect communication to avoid causing discomfort or embarrassment or offense. So the examples of how some students would ask a friend to close the window if they were feeling cold. These are the example of they would say in English to English-speaking friend. The first is,
Could you close the window for me?
Can I close the window? Hey yo, close the window, would you?
that's the way they say in English to English friend. Meanwhile, these are what they would say in Japanese to a Japanese friend.
Isn't it a little chilly?
It's cold, don't you think?
I wonder why it's so cold today.
In Japanese examples, none of the students actually mentioned the window. That's because in Japanese, indirectness is a sign of intimacy and is often used between friends as a sign of mutual understanding and friendship. Okay, now we move on to politeness and gender. There's a belief that women are polite and men are impolite. However, this belief is not necessarily true. In her book, Gender and Politeness, Mills 2003 points out that context has an important role to play in terms of whether what someone says is interpreted as polite or not. She gives the example of straight remarks to illustrate this. If, for example, I say hello gorgeous to a longtime friend when I see her, this can be taken as an expression of intimacy and rapport, that is, as a positive politeness or involvement strategy. However, if someone calls this out from a building site to a woman walking by, this can have the opposite effect. For the women, it may be an act of harassment. That's why we need to consider who is saying what to whom, from what position, where, and for what purpose in order to come to a closer understanding of this. Men and women have distinct attitude towards language function and communication styles. Women tend to use language to build relationships and connections, emphasizing the effective aspect, making them appear more polite. On the other hand, men use language to negotiate status and expertise, focusing on the referential function. When we are talking about giving compliments and saying sorry, men often give more compliments to women, maybe because they think women value compliments or because they see it as their role. Meanwhile, apologies are used to make things better after someone makes a mistake. Men and women have different ways of saying sorry. Women focus on keeping a good relationship, while men tend to use more formal ways to apologize. Okay, I think that's all from my explanation about face and politeness across cultures and politeness and gender. We continue to the next presenter, that is Nurul Maskana. Thank you.
Last, Nurul will talk about 5. Face-threatening acts. 6. Politeness and cross-cultural pragmatic failure.
Assalamualaikum, hello everyone, I'm Nurul Maskana. In this video, I would like to explain 2 points in the chapter of Discourse and Pragmatics. The first one is face-threatening and the second is politeness and cross-cultural pragmatic failure. Well, face-threatening acts are communicative actions or behaviors that have the potential to challenge or threaten a person's self-esteem, public image, or social identity. They can result in the loss of face, which is the positive social value a person claims in a given interaction. Face can be seen as a person's sense of dignity, respect, and social standing. Here are 3 types of face-threatening acts and examples in our daily life. First, face-threatening acts by bold on record strategies.
These are direct and explicit acts that challenge someone's faith. For example, giving negative feedback or making a request that imposes on someone's time or resources. For example, telling a coworker that their presentation was poorly organized and needs significant improvement. Second, positive politeness strategies. These are indirect ways of addressing face-threatening acts while minimizing face-threatening aspects. They often involve being considerate and emphasizing common ground or shared interests. For example, instead of directly asking a friend to lend you money, you might say, "I'm in a tight spot right now, and I know you've been in a similar situation before. Do you think you could help me out?" The third is negative politeness strategies, are ways to be polite by showing respect and being indirect when you need to ask for something or interrupt someone. For example, instead of saying directly, "Can we talk?" you might say, "Sorry to disturb you, but could we have a quick chat when you have a moment?" This way, you're being polite when considerate of the other person's feeling. Alright, the second discussion is about politeness and cross-cultural pragmatic failure. By looking at the title, we know that politeness and cross-cultural pragmatic failure are concepts related to how people communicate and interact in different cultural contexts. Alright, we come to the term politeness. Politeness means being nice and respectful when we talk to people. But how you show politeness can change from place to place. In some places, being direct and clear is polite, while in others, being more indirect and humble is better. For example, in Japan, instead of saying no directly, they might say something like, "I'll think about it," which is a polite way to say no. Like in our country, Indonesia, we call it basa-basi. Okay, the second is cross-cultural pragmatic failure. This happens when people from different cultures don't understand each other well because they use different ways of talking. This can lead to misunderstandings or hurt feelings. For example, imagine an American boss saying, "You're the best," to an employee in some places. This is great, but in others, it might sound fake or too strong, causing confusion. That's all about our presentation today. Thank you very much for your great attention, and let's move to the question and answer session. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Have a nice day.
Thank you for watching class. See you in next video.